Hello and welcome. This is part of the FD seminar series. By way of introduction, my name is Tamara Beach. I'm a senior manager in our employment tax team. Today, I'm going to be covering something that is becoming increasingly critical for all manner of organisations, employment tax, and how to effectively manage risk in a workforce that is constantly evolving. So as a little bit of an introduction before we get through to the agenda, as many of you probably already know, the world of work is changing at a really unprecedented pace. The rise of flexible working arrangements, the gig economy, remote and hybrid roles, the increasing use of technology, these are all reshaping the employment landscape. These changes bring immense opportunities for businesses, but they also introduce significant challenges, especially when it comes to employment tax compliance and risk management. So jumping through to this agenda here, I've got a fairly tight schedule, so I'll try and keep things relatively short and sweet for you. Firstly, we will start with an introduction to the world of global mobility and how employers need to adapt in order to stay compliant with an increasingly mobile employee population. Next, we will look at the future workforce and labour supply chains in light of the new legislation coming in from April 2026. We'll cover, are the potential savings worth the compliance risks? And then finally, we will discuss national minimum wage, the common pitfalls, and how to hopefully go about avoiding them. So, number one, we'll start with global mobility. So, what do we really mean by global mobility? I think that's probably a good place to start with. So global mobility refers to the management of a company's international workforce, involving the movement of employees across borders. It encompasses various types of international assignments, from long-term relocations to short-term assignments and business travel, and includes managing the complexities of immigration, tax, and payroll, to name a few. So jumping through to this first slide here, down here on the left, we have the potential drivers for increasingly mobile workforces. So globalization, companies are expanding globally. They need talent that can work across borders and different time zones. Do you mind if I just quickly go back and start this global mobility section again? Sorry.
Of course, no problem at all. Just go for it.
Cool, I'll start. Can I go back a slide?
Yeah,
it won't let me.
Go on your.
It
will do. It will do.
Okay.
If you use your left arrow. Should do.
For some weird reason, it's not. I'll just do it. I did it manually rather than the keyboard, and that's fine. Okay, I'll start from here. Sorry.
No problem, Sarah.
So global mobility. If we start with what we mean by global mobility, so global mobility refers to the management of a company's international workforce involving the movement of employees across borders. It encompasses various types of international assignments, from long-term relocations to shorter-term assignments and business travel. It includes managing the complexities of immigration, tax, and payroll, to name a few. So down here on the left, we have the potential drivers for increasingly mobile employee populations. First one being globalization. So companies are expanding globally. They need talent that can work across borders and across time zones. Talent shortages. So employers are no longer limited by location and can look beyond markets to find individuals with the specialist skills required for certain roles. Technological advancements, so cloud computing, mobile devices, tools like Teams and Zoom, these all enable individuals to work seamlessly regardless of where they are in the world. Finally, evolving employee expectations. Workers prioritize flexibility, work-life balance, autonomy now more than ever. The demand for remote and hybrid work models has surged, especially since the pandemic. In the middle, we've got the benefits and challenges, which ties in with a lot of what we've already covered. So access to diverse talent, that enables companies to tap into a wide range of skills and expertise from different regions and cultures. Entering new markets, so companies can reach new customers, increase their business opportunities worldwide. You've got the legal and compliance complexities. So how can a company manage their legal requirements across countries? That can be quite challenging, involves quite a need for careful attention to regulations and policies. And then you've got cultural adaptation and logistics. So how to navigate cultural differences, coordinating logistics. These are key challenges in successful global mobility management. So finally, probably the most important part from our perspective as tax advisors, what do employers need to consider as a priority? So immigration law compliance. So employers should be liaising with a specialist immigration lawyer to ensure that individuals have the right to work in the relevant jurisdiction and that all regulations are and have been adhered to. The tax implications. So does an individual need to pay local tax and social security? And if so, how is that done? Is there a withholding tax requirement? Does the individual need to prepare a tax return? Does the employer have registration obligations? Do they have payment obligations? Social security, are there local corporate taxes that need to be considered? Compensation structures. So employers need to design fair and competitive compensation plans that are tailored for a mobile workforce. And then finally, employee support programs. So employers can provide support programs that help their mobile employees adapt and succeed in diverse locations. So things like immigration and visa assistance, relocation support, culture and language training, provision of tax advice. These are all really useful tools that can be used. So common issues. So these 3 points here are common queries that we receive and see a lot of as part of the work that we do. The first one there being remote workers, quite often led by personal choice now, and international assignments. The key issue is usually whether there could be a double tax obligation and how that may be avoided. We would normally look at the home and host tax position, often utilising overseas advisors, consideration of double tax agreements for any double tax relief, foreign tax credits, etc. Non-resident directors. So this is a really big and can be quite complex area that HMRC do show quite a lot of interest in. So it's where you generally have overseas-based directors on the boards of UK companies. If such directors have even just one UK workday, it can trigger UK tax implications. Again, double tax agreements are somewhere you would normally look, but these don't often provide any protection for directors. We may need to consider payroll relaxation, such as Section 690 directions. As I said, I can't really emphasize how much of a complex area this is. And then finally, the knock-on impact on other taxes. So sometimes eliminating one issue, potentially from an employment tax perspective, for example, being sure that a non-resident director doesn't have any UK work days, they maybe join board meetings remotely, but that could then cause other issues for the employer company. So potentially corporate residence, permanent establishment risks. These are all things that would need to be considered alongside. So moving forward to our recommendations here. So companies that have employees working overseas, or potentially even individuals coming to work in the UK from overseas, should really take action promptly to avoid any inadvertent tax implications. The first one here, we've got the development of a comprehensive global mobility policy. Moving over to the right, ensuring that the right person is aware of any overseas travel by employees, even if it's only very short term. In line with that, you've got needing to have a system to track the days of employees working overseas. Again, very short visits can add up within a tax year and potentially cause issues that need to be considered and potentially action taken. Finally, and probably the most important factor here, is to obtain tax advice from the get-go. Ideally, before you have anyone that starts working overseas, a UK advisor should be able to either obtain or to advise how you can obtain overseas advice. And it's really important to make sure that the advice does join up and both sides are being considered in the round. So that's everything from a global mobility perspective, a little bit of a whistle-stop tour there, but we will jump forward and move on to our next topic, which is future workforce and labour supply chain taxes. Are the savings worth the compliance risk? As I kind of mentioned before, this is quite topical in light of new legislation that's due to come in from April 2026. This legislation aims to shift the liability for unpaid pay-as-you-earn and national insurance to recruitment agencies and end clients when an umbrella company is used. The change is aimed at tackling tax non-compliance, fraud and avoidance within these supply chains by making all parties more accountable. It's hoped to improve compliance, protect workers from unexpected tax bills and raise significant government revenue. So moving forward here. So emerging workforce models and labour market trends in 2025 tend to reflect a bit of a dramatic shift in how work is structured, sourced and valued. So gig and freelance work, this involves self-employment, where a person works on a short-term contract or project for various clients instead of a single long-term employer. This is a really growing area. It offers workers flexibility, diverse job opportunities beyond traditional employment. A good example of a gig work, maybe an Uber driver, freelance work, an independent journalist. There's multiple examples for each. Another key one there, remote teams. So this is really supported by digital tools and virtual communication platforms. As I said, think Teams, Zoom. You don't need to be physically together to work effectively in a team. And most organizations now across the world are kind of utilizing that. Digital platforms. So these facilitate connections between employers and workers, streamlining access to gigs and projects. You've got contingent labor growth. Increased use of contingent labor provides companies with workforce flexibility. They can adapt to changing market demands. And then finally, you've got employers' costs. So using an off-payroll workforce is quite often believed to bring cost savings. So for example, reduced employer national insurance is quite a key and often seen one there. So what are the potential cost savings and associated risks? And what do all of the prior points that we've just considered help the employer, which is obviously why they've become popular? Quite simply, they result in reduced labour costs and improved operational efficiency. But is all of that as rosy as it seems? Potentially not. It's really important to consider the regulatory compliance challenges, the impact on quality. So are you getting the work out of the people that it needs to? Is there any impact on worker engagement and morale? Is this potentially negatively impacting worker productivity? These are all points to consider as part of the workforce structuring. So what are the potential strategies for responsible and sustainable workforce planning? First one we have here, cost efficiency balance. So are you balancing cost reduction with the workforce needs for sustainable success? Compliance assurance. This is essentially assuring that workforce planning aligns with legal and regulatory standards and getting that advice if you're unsure. Employee well-being, prioritizing the health and satisfaction of employees to retain talent and develop a productive work environment. That's a really key one there. Talent development, investing in employees' development through training, potentially skill development programs to future-proof talent and reduce redundancy risk. So these are all quite key strategies there and certainly something worth considering. My last slide on this topic here, and that's labour supply chain and IR35. I think much of this slide is probably fairly self-explanatory, but as I have made reference to a few times now, rogue umbrella companies are causing or have become quite a headache for HMRC. Many of the current tax cases relate to avoidance schemes by these businesses, which act as employment and payroll service providers in the temporary labour market. Well, HMRC is fighting back. Changes from April 2026 will make employment agencies jointly and severally liable for pay-as-you-earn and national insurance on payments made to workers engaged by umbrella companies. Where there's no agency, responsibility will fall to the end client business. Where umbrella companies fail to fulfill their pay-as-you-earn obligations, other parties in the labour supply chain will be equally liable for the tax. Now, businesses that use labour supply chains will need to make significant decisions about their operational models and ensure that robust processes are in place to manage the new liabilities as soon as possible. The key point here is to be proactive and take action before this may become an issue in the future. So I'm drawing closer to the end of our presentation now. This is our third and final topic, and that is national minimum wage. The national minimum wage is the legal minimum hourly rate that most workers in the UK must be paid. It varies by age and apprenticeship status. So the rates are reviewed and generally increased each April, with the current rate, so that's from April 2025, being £12.21 per hour for those aged 21 and over. That's known as the national living wage, and it's £10 for those aged 18 to 20 and £7.55 for those under 18 or apprentices. So the next slide here covers the common misconceptions around national minimum wage. So many employers mistakenly believe that minimum wage laws are simple, but of course, as is anything with tax, they're full of nuances that can trip up even well-meaning employers. So here are some of the key common misconceptions and the realities behind them. So first one there, many misunderstand which employees are covered by national minimum wage regulations and who is excluded. For example, it doesn't only apply to full-time employees, it applies to all workers, including part-time, casual staff, apprentices, agencies, those on probation. Misinterpretation of how to accurately calculate working hours can lead to compliance issues and underpayments. So, for example, maybe workers that are paid on commission, they must still earn at least the national minimum wage when averaged over their pay reference period. Travel between work assignments need to be paid and factored into national minimum wage calculations. That's quite a common misunderstood area. And then finally, there is a huge amount of misunderstanding about how bonuses and deductions can affect minimum wage calculations. To be clear, so these need to be paid on top of national minimum wage and not used to top up wages. So what are the day-to-day risks around national minimum wage? So I've got quite a long list to whiz through here, but starting on the left there, we've got incorrect worker classification. So misclassifying workers as salaried, output-based or unmeasured without meeting legal criteria. This can lead to incorrect pay calculations, especially for salaried staff without or that do work excess hours. Unpaid working time, so failing to pay for the time spent training, traveling between assignments, potentially waiting between shifts. So these hours do count as working time and should be included in the national minimum wage calculations. Pay deductions, so uniform costs, admin fees, meals, maybe salary sacrifice scheme deductions. These all can reduce earnings below the national minimum wage, which needs to be taken into account. Manual payroll errors, so maybe rounding down hours or using manual systems. These can all increase the risk of miscalculation. Next slide here, we've got age-related age changes. So maybe missing birthdays that could trigger a rate increase, or maybe apprentice transitions. These can all result in underpayment with regards to the national minimum wage rules. You've got accommodation offset. So there's a risk that employers charge above the allowable accommodation offset rate. And the impact that would have was essentially that excessive deductions could then push wages below the legal threshold. Commission and bonuses, as I've already mentioned, need to be paid on top of national minimum wage and not used to top up wages. And then technology and outsourcing. So efficiency drives like automation, maybe gig workers, these can all potentially unintentionally bypass compliance checks. So what are the risks and consequences here of being on the wrong side of the national minimum wage regulations? It's an area that HMRC actively investigate, particularly for high-risk sectors, and they do use worker interviews to verify pay practices. So the potential consequences for non-compliance, you've got financial penalties. Even, accidental non-compliance can lead to significant financial penalties and back payments to employees. You've got potential reputational damage. So failing to adhere to national minimum wage regulations can cause reputational damage. HMRC do use the name and shame routine that can affect business trust and customer perception. And then finally, there are legal consequences. So legal action could be taken, leading to court cases and potentially further liabilities. So these are all quite serious consequences that could arise, and definitely something to bear in mind when considering the national minimum wage procedures within your own entities. I think final point on this section here. So what are the best practices for ensuring accuracy? So regular payroll reviews. So conducting internal audits to verify that all workers are being paid correctly, reviewing payroll systems and employment contracts for potential compliance risks. So all of these should be done on a fairly regular basis. Staff training, so providing regular training to help employees understand the wage regulations, how to track the actual hours worked, and the proper payroll procedures. Encouraging staff to flag potential issues or discrepancies is a really key one, because if it's not seen and raised, then no action can be taken. Compliant payroll software, so making sure that you're using updated software. These can automate calculations and just ensure adherence to legal wage standards. Perhaps if you're using labour supply chains or agencies, confirm that they comply with national minimum wage laws. Employers do retain the responsibility for ensuring that workers in their supply chain are paid correctly. That's probably quite an important one to flag there. And then finally, regulatory updates. So staying informed about changes in wage laws and rates ensures ongoing compliance and accuracy. It's really important to apply the correct rate based on age and employment status. So apprentices, part-time workers, casual workers, etc. So that really brings the more technical side to a close. Really, it's really important that while the workforce will continue to change, and there's been a lot of change so far, and obviously this will certainly continue going forward. But it's critical that the principles of good risk management remain constant. So staying informed, being proactive, seeking external support when needed. Just to round up the three topics that we've really discussed there, so global mobility challenges, so ensuring that companies have good, robust strategies. It's really important for navigating the challenges of having a globally mobile workforce strategies, and adaptive workforce strategies and that. So being aware of labour trends and risks is really key to developing resilient, compliant and flexible workforces. But as always, care needs to be taken to make sure that you are within the regulations. A really key point there to consider getting that independent advice. And then finally, national minimum wage. Businesses must comply with minimum wage regulations to uphold fairness and mitigate potential legal exposure. Really easy pickings for HMRC, national minimum wage, and it's quite an easy thing for employers to make sure that they are getting right at the outset. So I think really to sum up everything that I've talked about today, essentially the cost of getting employment tax wrong can far outweigh the investment in getting it right. So by being proactive, anticipating changes, trusting your teams, fostering a culture of compliance, not only reduces the tax risk, but it also builds trust within the organisation, which is, as we all know, essential. So that's basically everything from me today. Thank you very, very much for your time. I hope you found it useful.